System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Wednesday, April 23rd. My name is Amin TMK alongside Emoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Emoja, hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Man, just swimming into nothing.
Yes, was a topic of conversation what the title would be today, but I think it is a theme that we both understand and we've both been thinking about, which is, 1984. The wars ain't supposed to end. There's not supposed to be a close. I believe I was listening to it the other day. It's something that the United States calls appeasement, which is literally just diplomacy. And that is what, most countries utilize. We can get a lot to talk about but I want to start here. In the last 24 hours, we have another 38 Palestinians killed. There was over 100 killed during the past weekend. They are now sort of talking about the food supplies, what little there is in Gaza for those to be bombed. The food supplies are to be bombed. No food and aid has been able to enter Gaza since the so-called ceasefire ended. And I think that there was or is sort of this American malaise over the news, like general, softening of people's views around Palestine. You don't hear the conversations as much. We run the Inner City Left Instagram page. Follow us on Instagram if you're there. We talk about a lot of stuff, a lot of things that we don't cover here, we cover there. And so far, I can tell, okay? We post all the time. I can tell which posts are being, in that moment, lowered in the algorithms and which ones aren't. And Gaza is being pushed down in the algorithms more than any other story right now. Usually it's Syria, usually, talking about Cuba. It doesn't matter. There's always a hot button issue. Gaza, not to say that it hasn't been like this, but it is, again, the year and a half of G-side that we've been witnessing. And this is the last thing before I give it to you. Thank you. Students in China in elementary school learn about what's happening in Gaza. It is a topic of conversation on many Chinese news programs, not just China. What about Russia? Topic of conversation in many Russian news outlets, South Asia, Southeast Asia, a big topic of conversation. We just heard the Indonesian president talking about the hypocrisy of the West. You come here and you want to teach human rights, but we're seeing 9 and 10-year-olds being killed, mothers, who are trying to care for their children being exploded. I threw a lot at you there, but I just wanted to get your opinion on all the things I said and, just kind of your opinions on sort of this general lack of conversation around Gaza.
Palestine, once again, is a fascinating utilization of American soft power from all angles, right? You have things where literally the president is making it harder for even people who are studying the sciences, in the United States you can be prosecuted for taking part in non-violent protest against Israel, right? So that's the way the Republicans come at it, right? Then you have the way that the Democrats ship and utilize and point the liberals as weapons. All of the continued language you see all throughout, and it's manufactured because they say the same thing, right? I'm going to sit this one out, right? Like when Ferguson was happening, Palestine didn't sit it out. For the activists that were on the ground, that were out there protesting and whatnot in America, people like you, people like me, when we're going to Twitter and learning how to deal with tear gas, right? We're learning that from Palestinians that have been gassed by Israelis, right? So when you hear these liberal, bougie influencers who at this point, let's just be honest, you've been saying it for a while, influencers are ops. That's the messaging they've been told. So from the so-called left, what most Americans think is the left, right? They're being told, sit this one out. They also have a great deal of animosity in that they see that, well, the Palestinians cost us our queen, Kamala, right? So then there's that additional motivation from the people that would care about this thing to not care about this thing. The Republicans don't care outright because most of them, by and large, are out and out Christian Zionists, right? So from the right perspective of American politics and the liberals, right, it's this continuity of message. Either don't talk about it, don't care about it, or straight up outright animus. So you don't care, Then you got the Trump sycophants out there that believe it's a ceasefire. Oh, Trump won. They don't even know that it's still going on. I go back to this conversation that I'm cursed to have, witnessed. But again, as geopolitical analysts, we got to look at all kinds of things, even from people that we don't necessarily agree with. There was this interview between Tucker Carlson, fucking op, son of a CIA agent, talking to Putin, and, Tucker's like, well, why don't you get your story out? And Putin goes, you can't defeat American propaganda. It's too good. It's everywhere. They have infinite budget. I don't even try to fight that war. And that's what Palestine is up against right now. The full weight of the American propaganda machine. And they knew they had to, because in this one way, the Israeli propaganda is just ass. It's just really not good. When you got the soldiers out there dancing, in negligee from Palestinian houses that they bombed, stealing necklaces to bring home, proposing to their Israeli boos, over the bodies of dead Palestinians, that's bad. It plays well in Israel, but it does not play well in other places where Europeans, for example, need to see themselves on some civilizing, responsibility. It is our job to civilize the rest of the world. And you got these Israelis out there doing that. Meanwhile, the Palestinian videos you see are 4-year-olds with their arms burned off, and it's like, look at how angelic their face is, right? Like that plays against what the messaging needs to be. And this is why the Americans have put the full weight on that. That's up to and including, right, the messaging. This is saying nothing of the things that happen behind the scenes, the outright tampering down of certain topics, which is extremely easy to do in an algorithm. Push forward 100% cat videos, push down 1,000% conflict, or anything that shows a kufiya, or anything with the Palestinian flag, or anything that says Zionism, anything that says Palestine. All of these things are incredibly easy to do. And it's not even necessarily a reflection of the greater care, because even in places like Coachella, which is a bunch of, let's be honest, essentially rich, hippie, wannabe, progressive, kind of do-gooder white people, you don't
want to get on Coachella? When you talk like that, we're not going to get invited to Coachella, man.
Oh man,
no name talked about that.
I was just thinking that in my head. Look, we've said it for a long time. The system will always take more from you than they give to you. And that's what we're saying. All I'm saying is underground, the message of Palestine has never went away. The fact that it's no longer, but again, it's the obfuscation, right? It stopped being about Palestine the moment it started being about college encampments. It's like, oh my God, look at what they're doing to these college students. They're deporting them. Yeah, but those college students that are getting deported aren't the story. The story is they're getting deported because they were talking about Palestinian kids being blown the fuck up, right? So you've obfuscated what the real issue is again. This is the skill of the American propaganda machine.
And they try to throw that on Trump, but this is also Biden had the headbangers in there, ready to tear these guys up. I'm ready to tear up these students. And the fact of the matter is they're losing socially. They're losing the messaging socially. We have the new I think it's the DOD spokesman, basically being like, anything negative that happens in Israel is Hamas. Like, straight up, it's Hamas. There was a report coming.
An Israeli soldier got eaten by a shark. The shark is Hamas.
Yeah, and the shark was also seen earlier on the coast where there was children and did not make an attack, by the way. Wildlife is fighting the Israelis. What was it? One of like a bobcat or something? Got one of them.
Bobcat is Hamas.
Yeah.
The IDF accidentally bombed a southern Israeli city trying to hit Gaza. The IDF is Hamas.
It's Hamas. So you have this study coming out, 18 to 24-year-olds, pro-Hamas, 52% view Hamas favorably. We talked about this with Mike from Turn Leftist not too long ago about China socially sort of putting their stamp on the loss of cultural relevancy from the West and other places. We looked up the most visited cities in 2024. It was one of the first years New York City was not on that list. The list other than London and Paris, everything else is full of global South countries, Singapore, Thailand, Beijing. You don't see the same reference. It's slowly happening. Something else I wanted to add or talk about was, I think we were listening to, something economic. It was an economic conversation. They were talking about the United States having 50% of the global GDP in the 50s. And now that is looking more like around 26 or 27%. So obviously that's a loss that you just can't recover from. Exploitation of the global majority is just not as lucrative, it is still lucrative, but it's not as accessible to the global hegemony, the American hegemony powers that exist now. And you can't really, they will say, oh, well, the market's going to fix itself. Well, how does the market fix 800,000 homeless people? And I think we use all these little metrics not we, but like American people use all these little metrics about the stock market and it's going to fix itself and all these little things. And we end up gaslighting ourselves when we don't see all these homeless people outside and all these other things. And I think the rest of the world is seeing this. The rest of the world is looking at places like Skid Row and going, oh my God. It goes back to the meme where it's like, well, I'm an American on the left and a person from China on the right. And, the person is like, well, we can at least protest if our police kill us. And the person from China is like, your police kill you? And I think, again, like, we know this because we pay attention to geopolitics. If you pay attention to geopolitics, you probably already know this. I'm not trying to be pro-China or anti-China. I'm just trying to tell you how it is. And I think the rest of the world is seeing that. Do you think that is also, again, like paying dividends for China in terms of, their ability to handle deal propaganda and handle propaganda when it comes to sort of the Western propaganda in the Western world?
Yeah, I mean, again, right, the largest auto show in the world is happening this week. It's the Shanghai Auto Show. It's the world's largest car manufacturing show. If I was to ask anybody where the world's largest car show happens, everyone would say Detroit. They would think, some American place. You would think Pittsburgh or some steel town in America. That's to your point of like how good the American propaganda is. You know what I'm saying? Like, but who does know? The automobile industry. Who's there? Nissan. Talking about opening up 2 new plants in China and learning how to do smart cars, from the ground up. Who else is there? Honda. Just because Americans don't know about things don't make them not true. And this is part of what China understands. It's a kind of patience that in America we just don't understand how to practice. And I say that to say not thinking about the long term. Always, they talk about the internal conflicts that exist within America and the grand scheme in China right now really is just give America enough time to come apart because of its own contradictions. I mean that to say, as a Gen Xer, I grew up being told, Tiananmen Square, Chinese went in, they killed all these protesters. You know, the tank guy, you can follow this motherfucker on Instagram. He's still alive. You know, he got a fucking TikTok. They led us to believe these things that are now easily verifiably untrue. Meanwhile, you know, less than 20 years later, you know, we have Black Lives Matter protests back in the day, right? And there's videos of police just driving through the crowds, mowing down Americans. That undoes your ability to even tell stories like Tiananmen and reflect them in a bad way, where like we have to wonder what happened. And then the cameras went off and the Chinese military went in. Well, damn, why ain't nobody videotape it? You know, that would have been great to see. You could have won the argument. Oops. Meanwhile, in America, the cameras stay on. You know, that's the one thing. It's always being recorded. The camera stays on. So you see these videos of Americans dying. You know, it's not even like Kent State used to be something I heard about when I was young. Like, damn, America went in and they shot these white little liberal protester hippie dudes. You know, they talk about it in pop culture. Remember, as part of the Watchmen, you know, they put the flour in the barrel and they all get fired on. You know, that's a joke now in American culture. But even then, that was something I heard about way back then. Now, as an activist, you can see this. You go to any protest and you see these things happening in America.
And they just don't show it. It goes back to the point of...
well, you can't help but see it, though. Because media is everywhere. It won't be on CNN, but it will be on TikTok.
It's on social media.
It will be on Twitter.
Yeah,
right? It can be found.
You know, and it just goes back to... was the guy who invented Boondocks and Black Jesus.
Aaron Magruder.
Aaron Magruder talking about branding and, you know, the left being able to brand. I mean, it is sort of about what reaches the general audience. You know, I think this was another reason why it was big for sort of iSpeed to be there, because he has eyes, you know, and that's essentially what everyone is fighting for, the attention of people to have their own influence. You know, this is why you see the oligarchs of America always trying to buy newspapers or media organizations or sports organizations, you know, because they know that the eyes are there and they can sort of, you know, kind of change hearts and minds, you know, via these very popular organizations. You know, and I think this is in the description, so we have to talk about this. And, you know, this is sort of, we've been talking about this because, like, we watch a lot of geopolitics and there's a lot of conversation about Donald Trump and the changes that have happened since Donald Trump is here and all the differences that are happening geopolitically because of Donald Trump. But again, we are watching what's happening on the ground. If you're a Ukrainian soldier right now, I don't think you feel like things are getting better or things are about to turn the corner. You have, again, just this slow, methodical, advances
never ending
on all fronts. I mean, it's incredible because, again, we talk about this being American, being culturally American, socialized as Americans. We view war as, airplanes coming in, big tanks, big invasions.
Knockouts. In fighting terms, Americans see wars as knockouts. Russians see wars as smothering, wrestling, pressure.
Don't you want to tap out?
Yeah.
Don't you want to just tap out?
Americans are cobras. The Russians are boa constrictors. Slow.
And they're begging for the tap.
Steady.
Mm-hmm. They're asking for you to tap. And I think that there was maybe some
creeping death. That's the Russian army. They've recently added 150, just to your point, they've recently added 150,000 men to the line of contact, whereas America would have threw that in one place and steamrolled through a city. Oh, we took Kharkiv in 2 days. We took Kherson in a week, right? Russians take that 150,000 and put them across the whole line of conflict, which is 1,000 kilometers, more than 1,000 kilometers. So instead of having this big, flashy city you took over, it's just a constantly growing line. One of the things I continue to hear liberals say, to your point, is Why would Zelensky recognize the loss of those 4 regions? And everybody's joking. It's like, because if he doesn't, it's going to be fucking 6. The Russians continue to move on. But I would say more just on an honest level, it's like when the repo man comes and takes your car. It's not your car anymore. Like, the things that liberals do not understand is force, right?
Yeah.
Who the fuck is going to make the Russians leave? They
Donbass
tried.
got repoed, man. Crimea got repoed, and it ain't coming back.
What Crimea?
Unless you can go back to the factory with enough force to retake your vehicle, it is now not yours.
Right.
And, I think you can ask, and again, it goes back to this conversation, this larger conversation when people are like, how can you support Palestine, but you don't support Ukraine? It's like at the end of the day, there are so many differences and there are so many.
It's an absurd question.
It's an absurd question that unless you either you're just not a, what do they call it? Good faith actor, unless you're just a bot or an op or somebody trying to, instill division within our comments or still, instill division within, the general, discussion areas of social media. Like, then, I don't really know what to take from those things. And again, I think it goes back to the conversation of the noise. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of what did Trump say and what did Trump do and who's there and who's there and who's there. What about the policy? The policy's not changing. And why isn't it changing? Because geopolitically, most countries like Russia, China, places that have been around for thousands of years. And we already had one of the, Chinese officials come out and say, hey, we've been here for 5,000 years and we plan here to be for 5,000 more. This is not a culture of Q1 earnings. This is a culture of purchasing power. When you hear Chinese people say, why do they love Mao still to this day? They'll tell you their great-great-grandfather got 0.78 acres, and a house. He got that, stability for me and my family. There is no point to have a government unless the government serves the people. And we see this better in China. It's better than in a lot of places, obviously Cuba, but China is one of the only places that can, kind of maintain this. And I think I know we don't talk about the Trump thing, like Trump being some peace person. Obviously, like, we live in America, know that's ridiculous. Nothing is changing. Nothing is moving forward. And essentially,
we're watching
why is that?
Airports get dragged off saying, please film this. My name is blah, blah, blah. I'm not the person that they say I am. We're watching these videos, right? So, like, again, the only people that are even partially deluded about Trump's commitment to peace are deluded white people, right? Like, or conservative ass kissers. You know what I'm saying? It's like, all of y'all went to war, theoretically, right, over this free speech, this woke agenda's gone too far, we can't say nothing. And now they'll foreclose on your student loan if you say something bad about Israel. Okay, so don't act like you don't see that free speech is just as tenuously under attack. And so if you don't see any difference between the Democratic administration and the Republican administration as far as commitments to free speech goes, that should tell you there's a continuity of agenda that is happening, whereas free speech has always been something that is like, this shit has gone too far. And, like, again, this is the cleverness of American propaganda, right? Those Sean Strickland wave the flag ass die for America people, right? They know that they'll always have the right, quote unquote, or believe, to critique the United States. That's just an inherent thing, right? So what does Americans do, the government, to get rid of that? Well, now criticism of Israel is illegal, right? And so instead of getting rid of the ability to criticize America, any criticism of Israel is now looked at as an attack on America, right? And so by just moving the finish line a little bit, you've still degraded 100% the ability to make any type of a critique, because now a critique of the Americans' government's application of power as it relates to Israel becomes a critique of Israel, which is illegal.
It's just a buzzword. It's just a workaround. Everything they do is a workaround. It's a buzzword, and we are being culturized, or whatever you call it. Acculturated. You have the MFA, not me.
There it is.
Acculturated, sort of, to always, like have this idea that it's like worse somewhere else, or, we are, we have to do something, or we have to create something that will allow, we have to go through some suffering to get to this place of winning. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to be okay with these tariffs, which are just raising the taxes,
which
by
means
another name.
raising the prices on consumer goods, right? So when we say what a tariff looks like, just again on regular terms, if we're talking about a 25% tariff, which these are not numbers, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass, right? On Japanese products, and that means on Japan, that means Japanese products are now 25% more expensive. It means the PlayStation, which is made in Japan, right, no longer cost $300. Again, just using regular numbers out of my ass, right? Now it's $325. Actually, it would be more than that because a 25. You know what I'm saying? Do the fucking math.
You're
right?
MFA,
right? Not a statistician, right? But take it a step further, right? Imagine we are not talking about a small purchase, but a big purchase, right? This is, again, why Nissan and Honda are at the Shanghai Auto Show as opposed to at some trade show in Detroit. Because they understand that 25% now would fall on them. When you try to go and buy a Nissan, God forbid, with their product line being what it is right now, it's going to be 25% more expensive than it would normally be. Who's going to pay that? Not the fucking dealer. You're going to pay that. You, the viewer. So you the purchaser. So again, acting like tariffs is something that other countries pay is just absolutely bullshit. It's the worst kind of protectionism.
Yeah, it's exactly the corporations who are running. That's democracy, schmocracy. Right. It's about what the elite want. It's about,
I mean, democracy is right. That's the perfect American buzzword. We were doing some research on Far Asia, the Far East politics, and there are elections coming up in Singapore right now. And I was floored, right, by every party that has at least 6 candidates, right, is going to be assured government time to give out what their party's platform is, and they're going to be given the equal amount of time and they're going to be given days, right? Like the English day is going to be Friday, right? And those that speak Chinese, those same parties are going to be able to get that same amount of speech time, right, on CNA, right, which is the Singaporean channel, right, to whatever other languages, Chinese, or the language, 4 different days of language for any party that has 6 candidates or more. Like that would never happen in the United States, right? But we think about ourselves as being this signal holder for democracy, the standard bearer, and like American democracy is some shit compared to like how democracy is practiced in the rest of the world. It's literally some shit.
If you see. And it goes back to the protest that happened, the hands-off protest that happened. If you're a child in Gaza right now, or you're a soldier in Chasif Yar, or a conflict in Ukraine, if you are a member of the Northern Resistance or Ansarallah in Yemen, and if you are protector, if you're a Secret Service person for Nicolas Maduro or Ibrahim Traoré, like you don't see any difference when Joe Biden is there or when Trump is there. You don't see any difference between. I mean, the differences are very small. If there is any difference,
I'll say this last thing, right? The Americans. I want to be careful here. The American selective critique of leaders is fascinating. How we have to hear that Xi Jinping is a dictator, Putin is a dictator, right? But not Netanyahu, okay? Not Mahmoud Abbas, who's been the president, okay?
Emmanuel Macron.
Right? I mean, come on, right? So, like...
These guys are losing elections and they're staying in power.
But they're staying in power, and that's correct.
So nothing has changed, and I think that is the theme of this episode. Why is everything so slow? If you pay attention to the noise, things are changing all the time. This person said this, and that person said that. But for the people who are still struggling, the poor people of the global South, the workers of the global South who push back against Western hegemony, and the people in Western countries that push back against Western hegemony and push back against imperialism, also have to experience this. And there is no, and people are always asking us, well, what do we need to do what do we do to change it? And it's like, bro, we ain't even know where to have no conversation. First of all, asking that question makes you irrelevant in terms of the conversation that is really being had at large, when everyone sort of has this very quick fix to what is supposed to happen in the United States. And I think for the most part, I'll just go back to this and I'll just give it to you. We can kind of cut it there. But the chairman, Fred Hampton, talked about couldn't be allowed into the Black Panthers unless you went through a 6-month political education program. Couldn't even speak as a member of the Black Panthers.
And they were still co-opted and infiltrated. Right.
And there was that type of rules that they had that even allowed them to last for that long. And in many ways, you can say that was the real end of having an actual party that can push back against American hegemony.
Meanwhile, you have these, let's be honest, influencers that pose as activists saying all we got to do is organize and vote harder. That's op shit. That's literally not.
Sound like Bernie Sanders.
And they'll vote for him. Well, until he tells them to go vote for Gavin Newsom. And then they'll do that.
I wonder how that one's going to age. I feel like it'll be pretty good. Some of the other takes that we had that were pretty good. I don't think either of us thought that, as the election got closer, Kamala was going to get a dub. And I think that, again, stay out of your political silos. They hurt you as an analyst and understanding your own.
They giving you analysis based on their feelings, man. That's dumb liberal shit. I'm sorry. It won't work. That's why they want you to believe it. That's why they want you to practice it, because they know that it won't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopes and prayers.
Things ain't going to change. And I wish I could tell people that, it's going to change and get better. But this is a reason why we looked at, I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it, but a lot of people, talking to us about October 7th. And we were kind of this is a blow to Israel in many ways. And again, we are seeing the cultural, social shift turn against Israel. We're seeing it turn against the United States. And that was sort of something that you mentioned when you were things are moving slowly because the United States is losing. They would be moving quickly if the United States was winning, because they're knockout artists. They're striking like a cobra. They're not wrestlers. They're not Sambo guys. They're not a boa constrictor kind of holding you down like your big cousin. Yeah. Nothing like that. And you're seeing people, I think, want to create these big moments of change when the fact of the matter is war and geopolitics move on a decade-long kind of timeline, century-long timeline. And that's why we're here.
It feels like the nothing, but everything happens in the nothing. You have those little moments where it seems like nothing is happening, and that's just where tension is building. And that's where we are right now. And I get that it's not very exciting, but it is very real. And the change that can come from that can be quite explosive. And you have to be prepared for the ways that the world changes when those kind of changes happen.
Let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. You guys can't see our lovely faces, and they are lovely. Everywhere you find podcasts, we're there. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. Check out our website, innercityleft.com. You can get this lovely book, Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins by Moshe Sumler. You can check out our Patreon. We have a Patreon. You can check that in the description. Shout out to our Patreon members. And we have 500 subscribers. Great. Yay. Thank you guys for subscribing. Send it to your friends.
Share.
And
like, subscribe. Make sure them buttons are pressed. Make sure the bells are clicked. We're trying to build this, and really the only way you get news is not co-opted, is to make sure you are the person that has the influence in making sure it continues. And y'all, that's a power you do have. It's better than fucking voting.
We're the only ones I can, with great certainty, good certainty, not absolute certainty, just great certainty, that we are not ops and that we are here for the best intentions and the desire. Yes, and to start them moving there. Okay, we're going a little bit over. Whatever. People don't care. I think I'm the only one that cares. Yeah. Final thoughts. Did we miss anything? Anything else you want to say?
Stay frosty.
For Emoji Low Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. And peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.